Haley, that is very interesting and challenging. And one of the interesting observations, many years ago, people expected men to do better than women. Now I have observed you, all of you expect women to do better than men in every aspect. Haley, thank you so much. So far, Professor Capiccio has taken us through sleep and health, how you can measure sleep, how you can measure cognition. Our next speaker is Dr. Michelle Miller, who is Associated Professor of Biomedical Medicine. And Michelle and Franco have co-founded the Society of Sleep and Health in the university. They co-founded the program together. What Michelle will do, Michelle now is continuing with the program, narrowing down the agenda. So we're moving from health to measurement, and now Michelle will talk about sleep disturbance and cognitive functions across age. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, George. Yes, I now want to talk to you about our more recent research looking at sleep disturbances and cognitive functioning in an ageing population. As we mentioned earlier, obviously we all sleep, and when we sleep at night, we go through a number of cycles of sleep. And these cycles last about 80 to 90 minutes. So most people will have about 4 to 6 sleep cycles in a night. And when you cycle through your sleep, you'll go into, initially, light stages of sleep. And these are the non-rapid eye movement sleep that Franco was talking about earlier. As you go through the night, these phases of sleep shorten slightly. And you actually spend more time in lighter sleep towards, this is if your time of sleep, you'll spend more time in the lighter phases of sleep towards the end of the night, and you'll spend more time in dreaming sleep towards the end of the night. And this means that as you sleep naturally, you're more likely to be woken up in later parts of the night than you would be in earlier parts of the night, and you're more likely to be woken up if you're in the light stages of sleep than in the deeper stages of sleep. And that's what a normal person does during the night. As you get older, the sleep patterns become more irregular and they get more fragmented. Sometimes this might be due to pain, you might have arthritis, you might have other illnesses that cause you to wake up at night, and your sleep patterns become fragmented. And in general, when you cycle through the sleep phases, as you go through from one phase to the next phase, you don't tend to wake up. But in older people, as they come into the lighter stages of sleep, quite often they'll wake up and they'll remember that they've woken up before they go back into the sleep pattern again. They also have less rapid eye movement sleep, so less dreaming sleep, and less of the what we call the deep sleep, that stage 3 non-rapid eye movement sleep. And this is also restorative sleep, so older people tend to have less of this restorative sleep. We also know that as you age, you have an increased susceptibility to certain sleep disorders. And this might be something like restless leg syndrome or periodic limb movements where you twitch a bit at night when you're supposed to be asleep, you actually twitch, and that might disturb your sleep. It might disturb your partner's sleep. And you might also develop a condition called obstructive sleep apnea. And this is where when you go to sleep at night, you actually stop breathing for a little while, and then the body wakes you up with a snort or a snore. And again, that might be disturbing to you, but it also might be disturbing to your bed partner as well. And this can increase with age. Also, as a result of some of this disturbance of sleep, we tend to see older people perhaps having a nap during the day and dozing. And in extreme conditions, they develop what's known as excessive daytime sleepiness. And this might be that you're sleeping in an inappropriate place. For example, if you're all asleep here at the moment, we might consider that inappropriate. Or if you're at the traffic lights and you fall asleep, again, we would say that is inappropriate, and that would be excessive daytime sleepiness. And as Franco was showing earlier, sleep problems can also lead to an increase in disease susceptibility, and this can increase with age. And all of these problems obviously can lead to emotional stress and poor quality of life. As you age, you also, unfortunately, have a decline in cognitive function. And normally, this decline in cognitive function with age there is a decline, but it's not too drastic, so we don't need to worry. However, for some individuals, they have a much more rapid decline in cognitive function with ageing. And initially, if you would say to take someone in this phase, suppose when they were 60 years of age, their cognitive function might be lower than someone else who's 60 years of age and same gender and same social class, etc. And you may not notice that they've got a decrease in cognitive function. However, as they then progress, they move into a phase which is known as mild cognitive impairment. And this might be where they begin to notice that they've got cognitive problems, and people around them might notice they've got cognitive problems. And it's these individuals that we know quite often then go on to develop dementia. And we want to know, what is it that puts you on this trajectory, or what is it that puts you onto this trajectory? And it's been suggested that sleep or sleep disorders might be one of the contributing factors that might be causing a more rapid decline in some people. As George was mentioning earlier, also people who have cognitive impairment or dementia or Alzheimer's also commonly have sleep problems. And sleep disorders in these individuals are predictive of the decrease in their cognitive function and the decline, and how rapid they decline and how severe their decline might be. So this has led to the idea that sleep problems and sleep disorders may be present and treatable in people with mild cognitive impairment, and that if we can pick up people who've got mild cognitive impairment or just the start of that decline, we may be able to prevent the rapid decline in those people by treating the sleep or sleep problems. And that's why we then set up this study to see if this is true. Our aim was to assess the evidence for associations between sleep problems, and in this case we're looking at sleep quantity and quality in the way in which Hayley described earlier, and memory and non-memory executive function tasks. And again, that's the task that Hayley was talking about earlier. Our idea was that poor quality or short and long sleepers might have poorer cognitive function than those individuals who sleep optimally 6 or 8 hours per night. We wanted to look at different components of cognitive function, like Hayley was talking about earlier, both memory and the executive function, because up until now, most people in the large studies have looked at cognitive function per se and hadn't looked at the memory or the executive function tasks separately. So we wanted to see if does sleep have a differential effect on these two different components of memory. The population that we're studying is the English Longitudinal Study of Ageing. It's a study that's set up by University College in London, and it's a well-characterised study of over 11,000 individuals aged from 50 to 100 years of age, and they are representative of the men and women in the whole of the UK, over age 50, obviously. And it's a study that's been set up so that it has very similar parameters and data collected to lots of ageing studies around the world. So again, you can compare data from the UK to data in Japan, for example. The data is collected using, it was started in 2002, and data is collected every 2 years. And data is collected using both computer-assisted personal interviews, self-completed questionnaires like Hayley was talking about earlier, and also every 4 years they actually get a nurse-led visit where blood's taken for biomarkers and they do more detailed testing on them. So the study has a wealth of data on economic, social, physiological, cognitive function data, health and biological variables. And it's also linked to financial and health registry data. So far, as I said, the study started in 2002, and there's been 5 waves of data from the study released. When we started our study 18 months ago, data had only been released up to this point, 2008. And this was the first point that sleep data was collected in this study. And this is the data that we've been analysing in our studies. So our study is all done at wave 4. And we're hoping that we may get funding from the ESRC later on to actually look at the prospective data later on in wave 5. So what were our methods? Well, we wanted to look at sleep quantity, and we've categorised our individuals into short sleepers, that's less than 6 hours per night, optimal 6 to 8 hours per night, or long sleepers sleeping greater than 8 hours. And the reason why we've categorised them in this way is again to make our study comparable to other studies that have already been published in the literature. We looked at sleep quality, which is, again, as Hayley described earlier, and you'll see here we've categorised it into least to most disturbance. So we've taken all of our individuals and we categorised them into least disturbed to medium disturbed to most disturbed. And then we've looked at our outcome. Our outcome is amnestic function, that's memory function. And these are like the orientation and prospective memory tasks that you were doing earlier, the word recall lists, and non-amnestic function, which is executive functions tasks, which again is like the word search that you were doing earlier. Now, we know that sleep is related to lots of other factors. So, for example, your age might affect your sleep, your gender might affect your sleep. Likewise, for cognition, age and gender affects cognition. So when we look at our data, we adjust for all the factors that we know might affect sleep and might affect cognition. And this is just some of the factors that we have adjusted for in our study here. So let's look at the results. When we first started to analyse our results, we saw very early on that there was a difference in the results that we saw between sleep and cognition in a younger group of individuals and older individuals. And so we split our population into the younger individuals from this study, that's 50 to 64 years of age, and the older individuals, 65 years of age and above. So basically around retirement age, so pre and post-retirement age. This is the number of individuals that we have in each of the categories of sleep, in our younger individuals and in our older individuals. And there's about 4,000 individuals in both of these arms of the study. You can see the majority of the people in the younger and in the older group sleep 6 to 8 hours per night. But there are also a significant number of people sleeping less than 6 hours or greater than 8 hours per night. ELSA is set so it has approximately 50% men and women in the study, and those that completed the sleep data, we had about 46% men in the younger group and 48% men in the older group on average. The age of our younger people on average is around 58 and our older 73. These are the memory scores and these are the non-memory scores across the duration of sleep. And you can see that the highest cognition, that's the highest cognitive function, is seen in our optimal sleepers, both in the younger group and in the older group. And this data is highly significant on statistical testing. Now, I just want to show you these data graphically, adjusted for all those confounders that I mentioned earlier, the factors that might affect sleep and cognition. So first of all, this is our sleep quantity data. This is our younger population, and this is our older population. The dark line is the memory scores, and the dotted line is the non-memory scores. And you can see that for the younger individuals, the pattern between memory and non-memory is very similar. Likewise, in the older, the pattern for memory and non-memory scores are very similar. But the striking thing you notice is that this pattern here in the younger group is different to that pattern in the older group. And so in our younger individuals, you have the highest cognitive function scores in our 6 to 8 hour per night sleepers, but we have a decrease in cognition if you are a short sleeper or if you sleep greater than 8 hours per night. By contrast, some of the older people might be pleased to know that if you're a short sleeping older person, we didn't find a decrease in cognitive function in short sleeping individuals. There was no difference between the short sleepers and the optimal sleepers. However, if you sleep greater than 8 hours per night, then the cognitive function score that we saw was much reduced. Now, if we look at sleep quality, again, we have our younger individuals here, and we have our older individuals here. And again, you can see a marked difference in pattern between the younger and older individuals. This is the sleep quality data, and in our younger individuals, we see no effect of sleep quality on the cognitive function scores in the younger individuals. This effect here in the older, though, is highly significant. But what we see that as you move from the first tertile here of sleep quality, that's the least disturbed, to the most disturbed, that counterintuitively, the higher cognitive function score was in the individuals reporting the most sleep disturbances in our older individuals. We know also that sleep quality and quantity interact. So we wanted to find out whether this unusual effect was consistent across all the categories of sleep duration. So we plotted the data this time, this is memory scores, for younger adults in black and older adults in red. And this first group here is all the people sleeping less than 6 hours. These are all the people sleeping the optimal sleep. And this is all the people sleeping greater than 8 hours per night. And you can see it doesn't matter whether you're a 6 hour, an optimal, or an 8 hour sleeper. For the older people, as you increase sleep disturbance, you have the highest cognitive function score. Increased sleep disturbance, higher cognitive function score. Increased sleep disturbance, highest cognitive function score. So it's very consistent across all sleep duration categories. And this is the executive function scores. Again, if we focus on this older group, we again see the highest cognitive function score in the individuals with the greatest sleep disturbance. And in our older individuals, our effect was significant. So just to conclude, we see different associations between sleep and cognitive function in younger and old adults. Long sleep equates to lower cognitive function scores in both younger or older people, and short sleep equates to lower cognition but only in the younger group. Sleep quality, however, was only associated with cognition in our older individuals, but the effects of sleep on memory and non-memory function were very similar. There was no difference between the two different types of brain function. So what are the implications of our work and what further work needs to be done? Well, as I mentioned, this study has only been done at one period in time, and what we would like to do is to analyse the data from these individuals 2 years further on, and then we could see, does your sleep at this point in time predict your cognitive function 2 years later on? So if you were a short sleeping individual now, rather than a person getting good sleep, are you on a faster rate of decline of cognitive function than you would expect? And that would then prove that it's the sleep that is causing this effect on cognition. Because at the moment, we can only say that these two things are associated. We can't say one causes the other. And what are the perceived benefits of this? Why do we want to do this? Obviously, if sleep disturbances does cause a decrease in brain function, early management of that sleep problem or the sleep disorder might delay a decline in cognitive function in these individuals with age. An early diagnosis of dementia helps to improve their outcome for the patient and the families involved. So I just want to finish by acknowledging Hayley Wright, who carried out a lot of the analysis on this study, Chen Ji, who's also our statistician who also helped us, and obviously Franco, who helped set up the Sleep Health and Society Research Programme with me, and of course the Economic and Social Research Council for funding this work. And thank you for listening.